Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
On today's show, we're talking travel through Africa, northern New Mexico, history, wildlife, hospitality, tourism. It's got everything.
Wow.
I know. Our very first segment of every second Friday is our International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association travel segment, and this one is cool, man. Well, they're all cool, but we haven't done Africa yet.
I know, it's exciting.
We haven't gone to Africa with one of their segments, and this segment, Elizabeth Willoughby, one of their longtime members of the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association, she takes us on her Zimbabwe road trip, an epic 21 days she spent on the road in Zimbabwe, camping and then floating on a houseboat, looking at hippos and wildlife and hanging out with people. So excited for that.
Yeah, for sure.
It makes us homesick, you know.
Yeah.
And then we go off to historic Las Vegas, not in Nevada, but in northern New Mexico. A travel writer, Debbie Stone, who's also part of the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association, talks about her adventures in Las Vegas. The whole area is so historic. You've got Wild West history. You've got the settling of New Mexico, Spanish history. You've got Hollywood history, the Harvey House history. And there's art. It's an art destination and a lot of architecture. It's got over 900 buildings listed on the National Historic Landmarks.
Well, it looks like cowboy country.
Register. Yeah, I know.
Nice southwestern.
Home to Pecos National Historic Park, which we've covered before, with various artists going there through the National Parks Arts Foundation. That's one of their hubs where artists can go stay for a month in the park and paint or write music or poetry or whatever you want to do. So that's cool, too.
Look at cowboys.
By the way, if you're an artist or anybody into that, today is the deadline for that. So check that out at nationalparksartsfoundation.org. It's the deadline for all these submissions for artists to be one of their artists in residence, anywhere from Dry Tortugas National Park to Hawaii volcanoes, Pecos, like we're talking about. So a lot of good opportunities there. And then we've started this whole series on tourism and hospitality in our Parks and Travel magazine, and San Diego employment attorney Ward Heinrichs is joining us to talk about harassment in the hospitality and tourism world, especially restaurants and bars. It also happens in hotels, of course. Not just harassment between employers and employees or, within the whole employee pool, but also what happens with, your guests that may harass the employees as well, especially in bars.
It's very, very relevant today.
I know. So looking forward to our time with him as always. But happy Friday, everybody. It is January 12th, 2018. You're listening to Big Blend Radio's vacation station, food, wine, and travel show, and it airs every second Friday. And we're streaming live from Tucson, Arizona. And we're your hosts, Nancy Reed and Lisa Smith, the crazy mother-daughter travel team and publishers of two digital interactive magazines. We've got our variety publication, Big Blend Radio and TV magazine. You can check that out at blendradioandtv.com. And our Parks and Travel magazine, go check it out, nationalparktraveling.com. So you ready, Nancy? Are you ready to go to Africa?
Always.
I know. It's been a little while, hasn't it? So I think we should get going. Stay tuned, everyone. We're going to Zimbabwe today by way of Ireland because why not? Food, wine, and travel writer Elizabeth Willoughby is joining us on today's Big Blend Radio show to talk about her epic road trip through Zimbabwe. Apparently 21 days on the road. Like, that is super cool. Nancy and I know about it, traveling through Africa and living in Africa. And, it's interesting. Elizabeth lives in Ireland. I know she comes over to the States. She travels around quite a bit, and I'm so excited to hear about her journey. She is the publisher of the website WriteShots.com, and that's right as in a writer, W-R-I-T-E, so WriteShots.com. I encourage you to go there and look at all her amazing stories, not just travel, but food, wine, all kinds of good things. And also for nearly a decade, she was the author of Tales from the Road. It's an adventure travel page at worldguide.eu. She's also been a member of the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association since 2008, and she's also secretary and officer of the organization. And I encourage everyone, as always, to go to the website if you're in the world of food, wine, tourism, travel writing, blogging, photography. A great resource for everyone. Go to www.ifwtwa.org. We just say IFTWA all the time. So anyway, ifwtwa.org. Elizabeth, welcome. How are you?
Great. Thank you very much. What a good introduction.
I know. Well, we're excited to talk about your epic road trip because I think, African road trips, something always goes wrong, but that's really part of the adventure. And I know you had some flat tires, but you did something Nancy and I have never done. You went on a houseboat, and that is to me, that is super cool because I've always wondered about that. Where were you on the houseboat?
On Lake Kariba. So Lake Kariba is one of the largest man-made lakes in the world, and it's on the border. It's in northern Zimbabwe on the border between Zambia and Zimbabwe. And this, I have to say, was one of the highlights of the trip. It fortunately landed in the middle, so it was a nice break from tenting because out of our group, my husband and I were tenting, which is a lot of work and, as you can imagine, not luxurious. So this, the houseboat comes with, it comes with a captain. It comes with, to drive the boat. It comes with cook to make your meals, and it comes with a deckhand. So really, really, because they know everything, you go out for your tours on the boat, and if you're for the people who want to fish, then these guys know where to go to catch the fish, and probably they come back with more fish than the visitors. So they know everything. So you're at they're at your beck and call. On the other hand, they just make it all work so perfectly because they know what they're doing.
That it's true. I know from having the different guides take us out, and I recommend anybody going on any kind of trip to Africa to have guides who can tell you because they live out there, and especially when it comes to wildlife. Because I know you got to hang out with hippos and saw fishing eagles and crocodiles and all that great wildlife that's there, and it's so they know the sounds, they know the movements. But what were you doing putting your hands in the water to get Gail's hat?
Yeah.
What was that? You know better than that.
I do not know.
Crocodiles can get you, man.
It's really quite a self-reflection, I have to say. We had just finished talking about this, crocodiles following these boats, and then there goes Gail's hat into the water, and I thought about it, and I couldn't resist, so... I don't know what that says about me, but I couldn't help but pulling it back out.
It means you're a traveler.
I think it's funny that you thought about it because one would expect that to be like a natural reaction, and then later you go, what did I just do?
I know.
So you did it the other way around. That's funny.
I know. I love this. And I want to tell everybody that you've got a wonderful article about your adventure up on nationalparktraveling.com. And it will also be featured in the February-March issue of Parks and Travel magazine, and so everyone, you'll get that on the same website. Just excited because you opened the doors for Africa for us in the magazine.
Yeah.
And because we were really focusing on America, and it just doesn't. We can't have borders. We don't know anything about that. We know about just travel and go wherever. So it is really exciting to have Zimbabwe in there, and I think it's timely. Zimbabwe's been going through some interesting political change, and as all countries go through, quite frankly. And I think it's important that people realize the natural beauty of these places, and to really don't just kind of not think of going to a country again because there's a change of government. And Africa will always have we want a lot of change in government depending on where, but that's always going to happen out there. You know what I mean? So it's just not travel is my point with that.
Yeah. And, this was, Mugabe has been Robert Mugabe was the president for all of the history of Zimbabwe. Before that it was Rhodesia, and it wasn't him. So, this happened was basically within days of when we left Zimbabwe. When our trip had finished, they had their coup d'état and military coup d'état, and although it was bloodless, thank goodness, this is talking to the people there. You could really, not trying to be political or imposing outward views. They were very willing to talk, and it was difficult to talk to hear these stories of these people. The rangers in these national parks haven't been paid in 3 or 4 months, and they have to bring their own food in. They go home for a couple of weeks and then they go back. They have to bring 3 or 4 months worth of food in, and they're there on this campsite for with no refrigeration or anything like that. So it's extremely difficult, and hearing how they're very willing to talk about it, how they're surviving and their strategies. Like in one of the camps, this young man was trying to get his official ranger's license, and meanwhile, to get by, he's knitting hats and mitts and stuff to sell to tourists who are staying at the camp. And he was taught by an American lady who had visited the camp, and he gets donations from visitors of wool so he can continue knitting. So it's just it's very interesting, and it doesn't take away at all from the wildness of the place that you're in and why you go to a wilderness campsite such as that. So it's quite interesting, and you can't escape the politics, but it doesn't take away from it either.
Well, doesn't it change also that when you come home, having been there and talked to the locals, and it's these kinds of experiences, as from my life, I've always felt them to be very intimate, because you're spending time with these people, the rangers, a lot longer, than sometimes in our parks in America. We're lucky as writers to get to hang out with park rangers all the time. They take us on hikes, and if they go with us, and every visitor in the park's trying to ask them questions because they're like the rock stars of our parks, And in Africa, those having guides, and you're spending time with them. They're part of your journey. They really become part of it. So coming home back to Ireland, or whichever house you're in at the time, doesn't it kind of make you, when you see the news and everything, it's you have a more personal and more realistic look at it. Yeah, than what the talking heads have. Just someone reading the lines. And
certainly when you hear a newscast about I was really following the military coup d'état when we had left, and not totally surprised about it, but caring much more about it because I'd been there, right? And I've already sent 2 packages over to Godfrey of things that he'd asked for him. He was so specific, he would like this book and something to help him point out the constellations, which would be a part of his job when he gets his license, and wool for his knitting projects and stuff. So it's you really get it becomes very personal. So
you get attached to these people because they are so dedicated. I think when we went to Africa, I led tours to Kenya. I think I led 3. And then I ended up living there because each tour I sent my people back, and I kept staying longer and longer there. I'm like, you really can't do that. It's like it's time to go home. And
only for
you get
so
attached.
long.
Yeah, because they live a very difficult life in a very beautiful place, and they are so dedicated. Even the children are so excited to go to school.
And resilient,
and it's so hard for them to get to school, and then having to pay for their uniforms is a huge, huge deal, and it and it means so much more to them. And then, you come back here or to the States. I'm not sure how it is in Ireland, but the kids are like, nah, I don't want to go to school.
Yeah. So it's interesting.
Honestly, I don't know how it is here in Ireland either. I've only been here for a little while, but it's like we bring gifts, and so that you're going to come across poverty when you go to Africa. It doesn't matter, where you go. If you're going on safari, you're going to come across communities that are impoverished. So when I went to Mozambique, I just brought a bunch of pens and pads of paper and coloring things. So you hand those out. This time, our leader brought Neil. He had planned anyways to go to a bunch of tennis places where tennis is played and competed in, and asking them for their leftover tennis balls, because once you have a competition, you can't reuse the balls, right? So to gather up those and like also little balls at dollar stores and things like that. And so we would be driving along in these remote roads, and out of nowhere would appear a whole bunch of kids walking to school in uniform, in bare feet, in filthy, dirty uniform, and they would just, their eyes would go, they would go bug-eyed, and their chins would drop. Like, what are these vehicles driving past us? Because we were a convoy, right? Not just one vehicle, but 4, and most of us with trailers, and then so we would just stop and throw out a whole bunch. We would see a group of kids when that we could have enough balls, one per person, and just throw them out, and the kids would be running all over the place grabbing these balls, and it was just so wonderful for them because everybody got one, and completely unexpected, and there they are just on their way to school. You can't change their circumstances, but you can add as you're driving through a country, unless you're going to stay there and get political and so on, you can't fix their quality of life, but you can throw a little bit of fun into it, perhaps.
And it means so much to them. I mean, and I love that you're talking about tennis balls and pens and pencils, and that's sometimes people take candy, which that's great, but this is something that they really can utilize for on and on and on.
Yeah.
I think
I never throw candy. I mean, this doesn't help them at all. I mean, except give them cavities, and they don't have dentists, right? So something that will.
Throwing food in the dirt.
Yeah,
it's kind of.
They used to have. I remember in Kenya and South Africa, a journalist would come over, and because they would do these sensational stories and not always get everything right, and they would find drums, where people were standing and getting warm, and it was on fire, like just like you would in go downtown New York or something. You'll see some of that too. You have those drums, the big metal drums on fire, and all standing around keeping warm, and they'll go and throw candy out there, take photos of the kids scrambling in the dirt, and take photos and put it up like starving kids in Africa. Yes, they are, but it was this. It was just it was demeaning. It's that, but it's just a really hard thing, because I don't think, like you're saying, we can't go into a country and fix their politics because we don't understand it. Even when we lived in Kenya and South Africa,
it's complicated.
Every person of a different shade or background, different color, didn't matter. Everybody has a different story, and it's so complicated and complex, and everybody makes sense, and so then everybody fights with each other.
It's probably not also our place to try and fix it. It's
exactly right. Exactly.
But what can you do when you see something? I mean, for me personally, I need to do something, and you can't just drive through there and take without giving something back. And so what could be useful in a small way, even if it's just leaving them with a memory of something outside of their usual daily, routine or something. And it might be a tennis ball, but it also might be the idea that, wow, there are these machines that come through, and they're carrying little houses, and houses on wheels that go somewhere, and where are they going and where are they coming from? Just you don't know what you're leaving behind there, but it's more than a candy, right? A candy, what does that do?
Nothing. I know.
It doesn't feed them even.
Kindness is really
and
what needs to happen.
Connectivity, and you talk about the different, we call them huts, rondavels. Actually, it's interesting. A lot of my friends come from. I still say Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, but they, growing up in high school, a lot of, the whites bailed over, and that's like, everything's going on because there was a coup right before we got to South Africa, and we had, obviously, Rhodesians of African descent also have come over the border, but not as much as the white people were bailing. But now I know that it's Southern Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, there's change happening, and I'm hoping it's very positive.
Yeah.
I really am, because it's just such a beautiful area, and the people, like we were talking about, are so nice. But you were talking about the houses, and it's interesting to talk, look at how they live. And I love that, the round houses in Kenya and in South Africa, it was always about if it's round so that evil spirits can't hide in corners. And so that's why they would do it round.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And it feels more natural.
It's cool.
To me, it's a more natural thing to do. I mean, if you look in ancient civilizations, a lot of things were circular, and it's fascinating. But so you got to see them actually moving houses, so they weren't always just starting from the ground up?
Well, we passed several, they had lots, like areas, and because we went at the most driest time of year, and we went deliberately at that time, so there was very little green, so it looked like, just a great big dirt patch, which I don't know what it looked like in a wetter time of year, maybe much greener. And on this lot were several rondavels. Is that what you called them?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, rondavels, yeah.
Okay. So, and, different sizes and for different purposes. Like some were off the ground, like on stilts. Because that's where they would, on the upper, raised floor, they would put their grains, and that would keep them safe from rodents or whatever. And then, there were some that they lived in, and probably several families lived in different rondavels on this lot or plot, and then it was completely surrounded with thicket, and for protection, or boundary lines. And then there would be this little pathway leading from there to the road one way or another. And it was all very visible because of the time of year, like of the dryness of the year. So,
Man,
and some were being, in the process of being built, and some were older, but there was quite a variety. And it didn't look. It certainly didn't look like what we're accustomed in our households, but it didn't look as primitive, I think, as one would think with that description. I mean, it seems quite organized and quite clean and maintained,
There's a definite way of life, and it's simple living, but it makes sense. And sometimes it's more environmentally friendly than what we're doing. There's it just depends on how the water source and things like that, and sewage. But just there's a one thing will be used 10 different ways. The functionality of things.
There's no wasting.
There's no wasting, and I think there's something to be learned from that. I definitely want to talk about the wildlife and being stuck in, with the flat tire, because that always happens, because it's so cool. It's so much fun, and then people come out and help and do things. That's the thing. There's that really friendly. There's a hospitality that I can't even. That just I've never experienced outside of the continent of Africa. To be really bluntly honest, there's this hospitality. Well, Mexico too. It's just there's this genuine somebody broke down, I'm going to come and help you, and it's not necessarily be scared. Some places, yes, you need to be scared. Yes, there are things that happen. So I don't want to be, altruistic here, but, when you were talking with everyone and getting to know your guides and the cooks and the people that you're hanging out with, not on the boat, but also just on the actual road trip and setting up camp, was there this part of where, we talked about you sending things to Godfrey and understanding what he's wanting to do and understanding their side? Was there a side for them that they wanted to learn from you about what was like in Ireland or wherever you're living at the time? Because I know you go to South America too, all over Europe. So did they want to know what was going on outside of Africa?
It depended on the level of communication, which makes obvious sense. There was my guide at Great Zimbabwe. He was very interested in where I was from and how welcome my country was to immigrants because he couldn't. Yeah. He was dying to get out. He's a university student, but he saw no future for himself in that country and just wanted to because he knows so many people. And if you talk to a South African, you'll know that how many Zimbabweans are going there for work and sending their money home. I mean, it was not an original phenomenon, of course, but Zimbabweans of means are trying to get out of Zimbabwe. But that might not be the same today. I mean, just in October they had this, they've got a new president. I don't know how, what changes are. They need to have a election this year, I think, and not sure what changes might come to them, but they're really starving for some changes, where some of the money that they're paying goes back into the people of the country.
It looks like a positive change, hopefully. We just hope. I mean, we look at places like Egypt and how you go yay, and the thing to me is also where even look at what happened in Catalonia. It's about people working together for something they believe in together. Positive change, and I think in that there's like a victory and a joy that we're steps ahead. But when you're thinking about day-to-day existence, it gets a lot deeper than that. So,
right.
But let's talk about the wildlife. I mean, what was it that compelled you to go to Zimbabwe?
The offer. We have friends who are South African, and they are Neil and Gail, who I mentioned in the article, and they are now sort of without a residence, and they travel around. Oh, wow. They spend a certain season in Africa, and they spend a season in Asia, and they spend a season in Europe, and so they're always on the move. And
how cool!
a couple of years ago, actually, I think 2010, they were doing a trip in. So because they're South African, they know the continent very well. Mm-hmm. And they were planning a trip to Mozambique in 2010, and we said, yes, please. So we joined them, and it was just a road trip. I mean, they have a 4x4 and a trailer for two, so, I always have to bring a tent. And it was a wonderful trip. Because I've lived in Brazil, I can speak Portuguese, and
cool.
In Mozambique is Portuguese, a colony, Portuguese colony. So, and that was. I just feel that the best way to visit a country is with locals, and not only because they know the ins and outs. Or mostly because they know the ins and outs, actually, but because you don't have to, because it's not tourist-like. And so you're just going there and you're just being, right? And you're just absorbing, seeing, processing. if you do it, you can see, of course, countries through a tourist agent organization. But then you're on a bus, and then you're with a bunch of strangers, and then you're on a particular agenda, and so on. Whereas if you go with a local or someone who's familiar with the place, it's a completely different experience. And so with these friends of ours, they were doing this epic trip through Zimbabwe, and we know that we travel well together already because of Mozambique. And you know, the trip that we did, I mean, it was like over close to 6,000 kilometers, I guess, and in 3 weeks. In it should have been 4 weeks, but yes. It would have been probably better if it were 4 weeks, but considering who was there, and like most of the people were not retired, you know, half of the group only spent 2 weeks, and then they went back to wherever they came from, and the rest of us stayed on for 3. But you know, that's the decisions that you make when you do the planning. Is
it's so cool to do those kinds of trips. Nancy and I did these road trips throughout Kenya in the bush, and you're going on these dirt roads, and and I do a lot of that part when we're on the tour here in the States, and driving those dirt roads, and there's a certain speed that you have to have with all the bumps, you know, to just not be boom, 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 the whole time. You know, there's an exact speed to it. You have to find it for each road, and something's always going to happen. And it's exhausting because you're jolting the entire time, and there's something that happens to your car. I know, like our car has to go in again. It's just like, you know, here it is.
Yeah.
It's exactly that plus dust.
That dust. The dust is like I don't think I've ever been able to possess a clean car in my life, but it is this real satisfying thing once you get your tent up, which that's a whole other thing. But when you go to bed in a tent in Africa, I mean, did you hear hyenas? I have to ask that. I miss that so much. Did you hear them?
You miss it? Oh my God.
I miss the hyenas.
They're awesome.
And you're like, oh, would you just shut up? We want to sleep.
I don't.
Really?
Did they scare you?
Yeah, I love the hyenas.
It's so weird. It's the weirdest
I
sound
think
ever.
you hear more hyenas, or I heard more hyenas in South Africa and Mozambique than I did in Zimbabwe. Actually, you know, and giraffes were rather scarce as well. I don't know why. Lots of elephants, lots of antelope, and not that many lions, actually.
Yeah, they're in trouble.
But yes, you go to sleep at night, and I just wonder, you know, why is this little piece of nylon protecting me? But anyways,
I know snakes. It's the snake factor.
I just have to say this, that the one tour that I led where we were in tented camps, and we didn't have to put the tents up ourselves. They were rather permanent tented camps. They weren't put up and taken down every day. They're pretty good, you know. They had nice flooring, kind of. It was luxury.
Yeah.
You know? And we had this one girl that kept trying to padlock the tent to keep the elephants out, and we were just like, wow, man, we have a big job to do here to get this. Like if she said, because she thought somebody would go in and take her things, we could live with that one. But she just, we had to turn around once because she didn't padlock the tent. And, we spent hours trying to buy a padlock for the tent that would actually padlock the tent to keep the elephants out. And it was just the funniest thing. You're like, okay.
How's it padlock?
They probably won't be knocking.
But yeah, this is really interesting. But, you know, everybody has a different mindset. And when you go to somewhere so different from where you have been raised, it does blow your mind a little bit.
Yeah, was it?
But you know, the elephants.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, the elephants will even step over the guide wires. You know, like
I know
these. Yeah. It still I don't get it, but I realize it, but I don't know. I haven't absorbed it so much, perhaps, but they're not interested in the tent. They're not. They step over the guide wires, they go around, they may smell you in there, but they don't care because they look at the tent and they don't understand what to do with it. If you get out of your tent in the middle of the night to use the outhouse, however, you might never make it back to your tent, but they're not interested in, they don't know what to do with the tent. They don't know what to do with the Jeep either.
Don't drink beer around the campfire, okay? Because when you do have to go potty in the middle of the night, like you're going to have to put something in your tent or you're going to have a bottle or something, because I know about going out. Like I remember it was in the Kalahari Desert.
Oh, gosh.
And we weren't camping yet at that point, but we had these little chalets. I know you stayed in chalets too. It's like a little duplex, so somebody was on the other side. And to go potty, you had to go outside to the little outhouse, which was at the fence. And the fence was like, what, up to my hip? I mean, it was like, why? What for?
Yeah.
And in the middle of the night, lo and behold, we had to go potty. And, Nancy we lived in the bush, like way out in the boonies, and she worked with Joy Adamson and, Elsa the Lion and all that stuff. And we should know, but we go potty, bring our flashlight, or torch, as you may say in Ireland. We get out there, and Nancy jumps in the bathroom on her own and, leaves me standing there outside. This is what mothers do. And I look around with the flashlight. I'm like, what? And I see these eyes, and I'm like, uh-oh. Finally, Nancy comes out, and seriously, as we're getting back into the chalet, you hear the roar. And when you hear the lion roar and you are out there, seriously, you may have to go back to the outhouse, but you're not, The next morning we heard the lady next door get up before everybody did and take her chamber pot, and you heard her just throw the goods right out there because she wasn't even going to go. She was already freaked out. People were scared because it can scare you, man. Lion roars they're deep.
Yeah. Well, they're not kidding. They don't live by our rules, right? They are not kidding. So you do not. This was the rule for this trip. You do not. You go into your tent at night from the fire, and you do not come out before dawn.
Yeah.
Period. For any reason.
Yeah. You have to. There's tools for that. So, Elizabeth, out of the wildlife, what to you? I mean, you have photos of fish eagles and hippos, and I mean, it's just amazing. You got to see a leopard. I mean, that is so cool because they're hard to find. A lot of times you'll find them in the tree with their kill.
Yeah.
But what was for you mind blowing?
On this trip, well, the leopard was precious. I don't think I've ever. I mean, I vaguely, barely in the end of a way field saw a leopard before in Kruger Park, I think, but never so close. And by close, I mean not that close, but I have a good zoom on my camera. That was really nice, and but I have to say, just sitting in Hoangi in our first camp, the camp felt like a parking lot. Actually, there was nothing special about it, but it had a nice outlook over a water hole, and man-supplied water hole, and because of the time of year, which, as I said before, was why we went at this time, everything came there. So it was, I mean, you could sit there for 12 hours and just be constantly wowed. It didn't matter if it was a bird of prey, a flock of birds, and a herd of kudu.
The kudu were awesome. I miss them.
Oh my gosh. And then the dusk came in, the elephants, one herd from this side, another herd from that side, and a couple of individuals over there, and it's just you just sit there and watch this wild life, and it's not gobsmacking, it's just wonderful, it's just it touches your insides because it's natural and it's real. I don't really know how to describe it, but it's not.
Yeah, no,
a zoo.
once you set foot in Africa, there's like it becomes part of the dirt never leaves. Yeah, the dirt never leaves your fingernails, right? I really believe that.
Yeah.
And I know manicurists have tried, but it doesn't work with me. But it's just there's a thing with that because I think there's when you're out in real pristine the natural world and you see things that are just you're awed. You're in awe. You know, I know when we went to Sequoia National Park and I was talking to the park ranger and you go a few times we've been there back and forth and people slam on their brakes in front of you because of a sequoia tree, and she goes, and you get a little irked, and she's like, no, they're in awe. They see it all day long. People just they just tune out of everything, and I think when a place can do that to you, where you just it's like we all battle to meditate, well, some don't, but there's that thing of monkey mind chatter in your mind, everything's going blah, 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 and you can't meditate. But places like that, I think you become really part of the universe in a different way. There's just this natural connectivity, and it's incredible.
It makes
so
you
glad
think
you went.
From a whole different perspective. And it makes you feel different about things when you get back to where you live, and you I think you relate to things in a totally different way, and you relate to things you never thought you would relate to. Like before, if you heard anything about a coup somewhere in Africa, you'd be like, okay, well, there they go again, and not care. Now you care. That's why travel is so important.
What got you started in travel and then travel writing?
In travel, well, I grew up on my father's boat or my parents' boat. My father was an adventurer, and my mother went along with it and dragged us kids, I guess. And so it was always, not a fishing boat and not a cruiser, just a sailboat, and so moving from place to place.
Is this out of Ireland or where? Where were you born?
No, I'm Canadian.
You're Canadian? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. And then my partner got a job in Brazil, and my partner is German.
Cool.
He was my boyfriend at the time, so yeah. So we moved to Brazil, and we went there because of his job. So it's not so, when you go to a different country, it's not automatic that you'll be able to get hired because they don't want foreigners. Countries don't want foreigners displacing their own people. And so if I were to get a job in Brazil, it would have to be for something that another Brazilian can't do. So the obvious thing was teaching English. So I was teaching English, and at first I took a course with Cambridge University to get my certificate, and some knowledge on how to teach English, and was teaching as a second language, and but I found that I wasn't learning any Portuguese because I was speaking English all day, and so I decided to get a job in Brazil, and so I did that for a year and found out that I didn't really fit into the Brazilian working culture, and purely cultural reasons. And after a year, my Portuguese was pretty good, but I found that I wasn't very happy. And so I did. Do you know this book called What Color Is Your Parachute?
That sounds familiar. And
it's about it's many generations old, and it's just about answering a bunch of questions and doing some tests and things about yourself, research, and discovering what your skills are and what you like, and then you can, if you're going to be working. You might as well, if you're going to spend so many hours a day working, you might as well be doing something that you like to do and that you're good at. And so this this book is designed to help you figure out what that is for each individual, and then try and help you find that how to find a job doing that. And so I did it. My mother tried to make me do it when I was 16, and I thought it was stupid, but when I was 30 something, I thought it was a good idea. So I did that, and in every aspect, it was, I should be researching, I should be photographing, and I should be writing, and so it became basically a no-brainer. Like, here I am in Brazil. Gee, what should I do? So I got a job with the Sao Paulo newspaper called Sunday News, which is a bilingual newspaper, English and Portuguese, and to do 2 columns. One was on travel writing, and the other on culture clash from a Canadian woman's perspective, which was supposed to be funny. And that's what got me into writing.
Very cool. And now, you've
travel writing for a career.
Yeah, now you've done so much. And again, everyone can go to writeshots.com, and I encourage you to go there and get connected with your stories. And one thing I want to say, because you've been with the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association since 2008. That's a long time. That's 10 years. So what was it, what is it that keeps you being part of it? I know that you're an officer as well and a secretary for the organization and the board. What is it that keeps you going, like, this is a cool organization? What are the main benefits for you?
Well, first of all, I must clarify that since 9 days ago, I am not on the board anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been replaced by I was the secretary on the board, and now it's Ariana Morrison, who is the secretary. So, but I'm obviously still a member, and what keeps me with IFTWA is the networking. It's because I don't live in the United States, so I don't meet IFTWA members personally very often. Actually, very rarely. But I've been on, let's say, at least two, anyways, media trips through IFTWA, and met some. And these two trips were very, very key for me, actually. But nevertheless, being on the board when I was on the board and networking through the organization has been very good for me in securing jobs or securing contacts for interviewees for articles or getting ideas due in certain places. It's just until I joined IFTWA, so I've been a travel writer for quite a number of years, and absolutely everything I did every day, every minute of every day, I had to figure out myself, find myself. Even, when I was living in Brazil, there wasn't, it was a few years before there was regular internet, and until I left there, which was the end of 2003 or the beginning of 2004, there was still no fiber. So researching stuff was very arduous and time-consuming and limited, like very, very limited. So, I met a couple of Americans in Brazil, but anything that I wanted to do, I had to, including how to pitch a letter or whatever, everything that I know about travel writing, I learned by trial and error. But now, as part of IFTWA, there's just it's like a library at my fingertips. So if I want to know something, here's a person who lives there, or here's a person that I know. Do you have any contacts there who could open a door for me, or give me somebody's name who I can pick their brain or something like that. So it's like part of a like-minded group all of a sudden that
nice.
is interested in sharing information. You know, not a group where everybody's hiding all their cards, but a group that's just, you know, oh, I know somebody who could do that. Oh, I know somebody who knows that. Oh, you know, just it's just fairly refreshing and friendly and open. So that's why I was interested in getting onto the board of IFTWA and why I'm still there.
Right on. That's awesome. It's a good thing because I know we talk about networking, and then a lot of times it's at conferences, and then, you know, people having, you know, IFTWA friends and members in their same location. So it's a different, you know, point of view. It's nice to hear. And everybody, again, it's ifwtwa.org, and I encourage you to go there. Anybody in the world of food, wine, tourism, travel writing, blogging, photography, definitely a good resource. And thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining us. Again, her website is rightshots.com, and her article on her road trip through Zimbabwe will have photos and everything in there too. Is up on nationalparktraveling.com, as well as in the February-March issue of Parks and Travel magazine, which you can get at nationalparktraveling.com. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Lisa and Nancy. It's been great talking to you.
You too. Happy travels.
Thanks. You too.
All right. Bye-bye. Does that make you a little homesick for Africa, Nancy?
Absolutely.
I know. It's pretty like, oh, man, what a journey, though. 21 days in Zimbabwe, everybody. And I can't wait to publish that in the Parks and Travel magazine coming out February and March. And her article will be in that issue. And, again, you can go to nationalparktraveling.com and see it now. And our next guest, Debbie Stone, is joining us to talk about Las Vegas, New Mexico. Before we bring her on, take a little listen to some music from South Africa. James Saunders, he is out in Hermanus, which is near Cape Town. And I figured this is a good time to play his music, take a little music break, and then we're going to New Mexico. So here is a song. It's called Freedom Has a Way, and you can keep up with him at JamesSaundersMusician.com, and it's SAUNDER. It's JamesSaundersMusician.com.
Before me, stretching up below. It'll take forever if only I go real slow. So take me by the hand, lead me through the door. There's a light in the sky that beckons in the night, leading to a distant shore. Leading to a distant shore. Freedom has a way, like the perfect stranger that came in your world to stay. I walked across these mountains, sailed across the sea, looked down into those deep blue waters 1,000 miles away, and I could never follow your religion all the way. Fear is her companion, the master and his slave, the master and his slave. Freedom has a way, like the perfect stranger that came in your world to stay. Where does it end? What will you say? Your story will never be in black and white. It's always written in grey. Just a handful of memories to write down in the sand. But these things that are forged so deep inside are never easy to understand. Never easy to understand. Freedom has a way, like the perfect stranger that came in your world to stay. Freedom has a way, like the perfect stranger that came in your world to stay.
Everyone, again, that was James Saunders over in Hermanus, South Africa, just outside of Cape Town, and that was his single, Freedom Has a Way. It's one of my favorite songs.
I know, it's beautiful.
It's deep. It's deep.
It is very moving.
I know, and it's just got some history in there, you know?
I know.
And we're going to talk more about history with the Fire Monkey.
Uh-oh, here she goes.
Stay tuned, everyone. We're going to northern New Mexico. Well, travel and lifestyle writer Deborah Stone is back on Big Blend Radio today to talk about her adventures in historic Las Vegas. And we're not talking about Vegas and Nevada with the ding, ding, ding casino machines. We're talking about a northern New Mexico destination that has scenic beauty, rich history, eclectic architecture, and all kinds of art. Lots of good film history in there, too. So I know our friend Steve Schneikert, our Hollywood historian, is going to like this story for sure. Her article about her experience will be featured in the February and March issue of Parks and Travel magazine, but you can go see it now on nationalparktraveling.com and have a look at some of the photos she took as well. Debbie is a regular Big Blend expert. You can hear her on Big Blend Radio and also see her stories in Big Blend Radio and TV magazine. So if you go to blendradioandtv.com, you'll see her in our expert department. But welcome back, Fire Monkey Debbie. You know you're always going to be called the Fire Monkey from now on after, Bhutan.
Yes. I do know that, and I embrace it fully. So how are you, ladies? Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you. I'm so excited about your trip to near Pecos National Historical Park, which we've covered actually a few months ago because one of the artists in residence, Pat Flynn, went there from. She escaped the hurricane of Florida and went up and stayed in Pecos. And I'm talking to her on the phone because the connections out there in the remote area. It's like we were trying to get the sound right before our show, and it started snowing while I was talking to her. And then all of a sudden, all these pronghorn came up, and it's like, wow. And so she's like, painting inside, looking out. It was so cool. So that area to me seems awesome. But besides the Fire Monkey thing, apparently after the La Posada in Santa Fe, Debbie, you're attracting ghosts again. What's going on with you and the ghost thing? Is it a New Mexico thing?
I don't know. It is. They're either they're following me or I'm following them. I don't know. But this definitely is a town that's got a few spirits that are hanging around in a couple of very historical places. So it's kind of interesting. I think wherever you go, where there's a lot of deep-rooted history or maybe a lot of conflict that's happened, you're going to find, haunted places and people who've experienced, different things, whether it's apparitions or, just some sort of eerie feelings or movements or whatever. But certainly Las Vegas definitely has its share of ghosts.
That just means that the people who lived there before don't want to leave.
Right.
So they're happy
true.
there.
I don't blame them. But I was reading in your article that over 900 of the buildings there are actually on the registered list for being National Historic, registered landmarks. I mean, that's these
that's
historic
amazing.
buildings. That's a lot. Because I've heard of Las Vegas and I've seen. I actually have, we have friends over in Amsterdam that photograph all these neon signs, and I think we've talked about it before with you. And I know that that's got to be one of those places where you go to photograph the old school neon signs. It's because of the history, and I've seen things out from, I think it's from them or someone else. But with that, all these historic buildings, how big is the town itself? Because it seems to me like it's kind of like a nice, charming downtown or the plaza, like you say. It doesn't seem like it's the city.
It's a small town. I mean, it really is a small town. The downtown area is fairly compact, with the historic plaza being the centerpiece, and actually it is one of the, if not the largest plaza, I think, in New Mexico. But it's a very small city. But what's interesting about it is that at one time it really rivaled Denver and Tucson, actually, and El Paso in size because of the railroad, which came there. And, at that time, back in the 1880s, I think it was, there was, 6,000 people there. And that was a big town, and a lot of people came through there, whether they were celebrities, they were United States presidents, or they were the gamblers, the outlaws and desperados like Billy the Kid and Doc Holliday, and it seems like so many people made their way there at one time or another in the heyday of this town, and then they're still making their way in there in terms of the film industry.
Wow, that's incredible. I know we got to talk about that. Just a little bit of history in the back of it, because I know you've got Pecos there, but the National Historical Park, which is, you've got a mission there, and then it's on the Santa Fe Trail. You've got Native American history as well, and then you've got the Spanish coming in, and so there's the Spanish coming in and the Mexicans, and it's like everybody's. This was like
a party.
Yeah, so everybody's there. It's like you're at the crossroads of history of New Mexico. It seems like up there. So
I think they all made through. Yeah, like you're saying, all these different groups made it through at different times, and it was a cultural crossroads. Starting with the Native Americans and the Spaniards that came in, and then all the different adventurers and people coming out west, and then you have of course, what people don't know about Pecos is that Civil War history aspect of it. It was the furthest west battle, very decisive battle that occurred at Glorieta Pass, and so that whole park is just amazing.
And then you've got that park, and then so this is the gateway community. I remember also Lorenzo, the park ranger, was telling us that Las Vegas is the place to stay when you go out there. So we always like to do that connection. The other interesting thing is, so you've got pioneers and homesteaders and traders and all these people coming through on this crossroad and railroad. And the other part that I thought fascinating, because we've done stories like Yerington, Nevada had 3 different names, and they changed their name to Yerington to attract a railroad dude, and he never came there, but the name stuck. It was better than Pison Switch, which was about a guy selling really bad whiskey and poisoning people.
That name.
It was like Poison Switch, and that's how it was Pison. But getting names of places is always very interesting, but this is neat because there were two towns at one time, and then they united.
Right, and actually there was the East Las Vegas, or what they called the New Town, which was where the railroad was located, and that was the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad that came through there. And then there was West Las Vegas, or what they called Old Town, and you really could tell the difference based on the architectural styles. Because if you were in the old town, it was more adobe, it was territorial style. But the new town, because they had all these merchants and these people coming from the East Coast, they wanted to accommodate their tastes for their housing styles. And so, you had Victorian and Queen Anne and Colonial Revival and all these other types of styles. And so it's such a funny distinction, because you drive from one end to another and you'll see these architectural styles and you're like, oh, I must be in Newtown, or oh, I must be in Old Town. And what is interesting is they kept those two towns as East Las Vegas and West Las Vegas until the 70s. I mean, that's pretty late to keep this going. But this is the funny part about it, is the two mayors, one from each side, came across the Galenas Bridge in town. They shook hands. They agreed that, we need to consolidate this and to make it one local government. But this didn't happen until the 70s.
Wow.
Well, yeah, because that one of them would have to go bye-bye.
I know. So they had to unite. They had to be, so this gets into politics, and then, sometimes things happen, But you said that there's two different feels, there's two different architectural kind of, there's a lot of different styles. I mean, you're talking about Victorians and colonial revivals, the Queen Anne. I love those Queen Annes, the architecture. They're so beautiful, and the ones with turrets and all that, But you said that the old town is more like, no, you're getting adobe, dude.
Right. And it's so clear.
So do you cross the tracks, literally?
Yeah.
Does that happen?
It actually, and not really. It's kind of like, all the houses on the side that are near the railroad are all that kind of Newtown stuff. And then the further away you get from that is when you start getting into the old town adobe type of style. So it is just such an interesting dichotomy to be in this small town that has such a variance when it comes to architectural styles, and then all the historical properties that are there and that people have, restored or renovated or are in the process of doing. And it, to me, it's fascinating. I love seeing that colorful characteristics of history that are so visible in a town.
Yeah, and to me that's the sense of place, and you're keeping the history, and that's, when you have a town, especially like you're saying, Las Vegas now is really moving to be more of a destination, and growing into that.
Right.
And if they didn't have that history, it would be very, it's hard to become something if your street is lined with Starbucks and McDonald's. You know what I mean? When it
exactly
a place of history. So I love to see that integrity and sense of place in a destination. So Nancy, we have to go there, because Nancy's writing this whole article series on tourism and the integrity of keeping it, sense of place. So we need to go.
You don't want to feel like you're going to a mall and everything chain stores.
No.
Then you probably won't spend money or time in the city or town.
Yeah.
You may go to the park and outlying areas, but you probably won't spend, and we need people to spend money in the towns, correct?
Yes.
So we don't need chains and box stores in tourism destination like
no
that.
Starbucks in Yosemite, thank
That's
you.
Right.
Whoopsie,
no,
just had
we
to say
don't
it.
want it. Go away.
It's a big thing.
Absolutely. It's all about, and in this town, it's all about authenticity. I mean, this was and is the original Las Vegas, and so they're very proud of their history, and so you have local businesses, local mom and pops, local places, and I know that that is a much more enjoyable experience for me to frequent and buy and talk to people who are residents there and who have been living there, and they're very, like I said, they're very, very proud of their heritage, of where they live.
It's a cool story.
I know, and the other thing is, when people tear down buildings, historic buildings, you now you're tearing down the ghost home. Okay, so
that's right.
I know, but you wanted to walk in where the ghosts were, and you went through a lot of places where the ghosts were hanging out, and some of them it's really cool. But the other thing too is a lot of these buildings have changed roles, so they even if they went dormant for a little while, something happened, so they didn't discard of it. It's like you seem to have some major people who own like the Plaza Hotel and the Park Plaza, and then there's people like Mr. Harvey. The Harveys are incredible. The Harvey, that's a huge part of Southwest history. Yeah, tell everybody a little bit about Fred Harvey and the Harvey House girls because, there's no harassment in that, right?
No. Harvey, he established these famed Harvey houses, which were basically a chain of hotels that were located kind of trackside or right near the railroad for passengers of the railroad system that were traveling between Chicago and California. And he thought, these people need some comfortable accommodations. They need some good restaurants, quick service if they're up on and off. And so he built these hotels, these hospitality places, restaurants, dining cars, etc. And the idea was to serve his customers. He employed these, young and respectable single women who were trained to be efficient. They were trained to be professional. They were called the Harvey Girls. They wore black uniforms, white starched pinafores. They lived in dorms. They had house mothers. They had curfews and strict rules. And it's interesting because I did a little history or a little research about the iconic Harvey Girls, and they were actually born out of necessity in Raton, New Mexico, because of the fights that were breaking out between male waiters and local cowboys. Fred Harvey said that I have to shut down my lunchroom because this is just not working. So he sought the solution to end these types of brawls, and so he then started to advertise for these quote unquote respectable young women to serve his customers, and that seemed to do the trick. And not only did he gave these women this opportunity for employment, which was wonderful for them. But in doing so, they said that he did his part to basically civilize the Old West, which I really liked that expression. But you can imagine how it was, these male waiters and these local cowboys and how they would come to, fist fights and brawls and how, the lunchroom would then be the scene of, these big riots. So this was a solution, and it really worked. And the Harvey Girls became incredibly well known. There have been books written about them. There are, videos and films, and there are museum exhibits about, the Harvey Girls. And in Las Vegas, New Mexico, there are two Harvey hotels. One is the Montezuma, and the other is the La Castaneda. And one of them is now being renovated into a more boutique hotel, and the other became a college. But the architecture of both of these is so intact, and you feel like you really are back then when these Harvey Girls were there, and you can picture as you're walking through how this would be back then.
That's really cool.
That is.
You get to feel like you really went somewhere special that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, the Montezuma Hotel Resort, I'd like to stay there. Mm-hmm. I would want to stay like when Billy the Kid and Doc Holliday and the Dodge City Gang were there.
Yeah, that's
I want to know. To me, yeah, we have a special song for you now because of all of these dudes. But
of course,
a lot of these buildings did change over. I mean, that was the main thing. But. The main resort, was it like really one of the first luxurious resorts in the area, right?
Yeah, it was his first luxury resort hotel, and it was, designed by these well-known Chicago architects. It was this Queen Anne masterpiece that had a turret, a grand ballroom, a casino, billiards, bowling alley, la la la. It also was a place of health restoration. There were hot springs, and they still are right there. And so a lot of patients with tuberculosis came. The air, the water was really good for them. So, lots of people came, and once again, it was your Teddy Roosevelt, your Grant, your Sherman, your even Emperor Hirohito, all these different people came through there. But what is interesting is that resort really burnt down, not once, but twice. And then it was rebuilt several times at the railroad's expense. And what happened is eventually it became, it just couldn't make a go of it. And then when the railroad left town and moved further south, there was a problem there as well. But then it became, all these different things. It was a YMCA, it was a Baptist college, it was a seminary. And then in 1981, Arm & Hammer purchased it and established the United World College of the American West, which is the only campus for the United States for this particular college. I think there's 17 of these institutions around the world. So you've got it's basically a college preparatory program. You've got students coming from all these different countries around the world, and it's a very rigorous 2-year type of program. So you're looking at students that are basically 15 or 16, 17, 18 kind of thing. And, when I was on the campus, when I was at the castle and walking around, you could see students from all these different countries around the world. So they really focus on fostering, greater cultural understanding by doing this.
That's so cool. And they're probably, during their exams, all those ghosts are like walking around and helping them answer questions. All those famous people are like, no, that's not it.
Yeah.
It's this one over here.
But isn't the building also one of America's treasures?
Yes,
which was
it is.
Wow. So that's
it is a cultural. I think it's one of is the White House Millennium Council. I think they designated one of America's treasures. I think it's the first property west of the Mississippi to get this designation. They invested, I think, $10 million into restoring the building, and it's really won awards. It's gorgeous building. I do need to point out that the best way for people to tour Las Vegas, I think, is with somebody who knows the history and who can really guide you. And there's one woman in town who's doing this. Her name is Kathy Hendrickson, and she has a company that's called Southwest Detours. And she has really embraced the town's history and is such a thorough and knowledgeable guide, and will take you to these places and really, give you a thorough explanation of the history of the property, of what it's used for now, what's happening with it, who was there, who were the players in town. She's remarkable. So when I was at the castle, she was telling us she was telling these really interesting tales, and you were mentioning about it being haunted, and there's supposedly some opera diva that threw herself off the turret years ago. And people, particularly
singing
students,
Rapunzel.
say that yes, exactly. But they say they can hear her voice, singing these arias, in that part of the building, which is really interesting. And then the other haunting thing is that the castle was in such a state of disrepair for a number of years that Hollywood found it, and they thought it looked like the most perfect place for their horror movie, The Evil.
I love that. See, that's what I'm talking about. Some of these Hollywood, we want to get into that too. I just wanted to. I know. I want to keep with also the Harvey, Fred Harvey story, because also La Castaneda Hotel, Castaneda. Am I saying this right or wrong here?
It's La Castaneda.
Okay, yeah. And so you said this was a Mission Revival style hotel.
Yeah, and it's beautiful, and it was I think late 1800s, near 1900, and it was one of the earliest properties to be constructed in that particular style, and it is really very famous in his chain of hotels, but it was also in great disrepair until it's been bought by this man named Alan Afelt, who actually is from Arizona, and he actually owns La Posada in Winslow, which I know you gals know about. And he also now owns the Plaza Hotel in Las Vegas, but he has big plans for it, and he wants to bring it back, to its wonderful fame, and open a 20-room boutique hotel and in the next couple of years. And so we went inside and looked around, and you can see so much of the original, the construction is there, and the stamped tin ceilings are there, and he wants to use as many of the original fixtures as he can, and also some of the equipment to retain, once again, that authentic feel or vibe to the place. So it's very exciting, and the whole town is very, I think, reinvigorated with this project, because it's such a treasure trove of history.
It's exciting, and I love it when people, keep these buildings. Again, as we were saying, I think that is a treasure. When you have these places be restored and people can, walk in and see it, and it's nice that you get to go there with the tour that you took. The other one, so he owns the Old Town Plaza, and he also owns the Plaza, Plaza Hotel, right?
He owns the Plaza Hotel, which is at the Old Town Plaza, which is basically the plaza. So he owns the Plaza Hotel and La Costanera, as well as La Posada. And the Plaza Hotel is truly this. They call it the Belle of the Southwest. It's one of the premier places to stay in town. It's a first class establishment. It's I think it was built in the 1880s. It's this grand Victorian facade. It's quite the impressive place, and there now are the rooms that are there have, some of them have these like names right next to the doors, and you find out that certain famous people have stayed there, including like Michelle Obama and Tommy Lee Jones and Woody Harrelson, because of the filming that has gone on in Las Vegas, as well as just the celebrities that have come through. And so it's, once again, you can walk around and go, oh, cool, he stayed there, she stayed there,
Cool.
We like
and,
it.
Okay, wait, isn't there also like a Byron, like that he's the harasser. This is where the harassment starts. I'm getting prepared for Ward coming on, our San Diego attorney. He's going to be talking about harassment, in hospitality. So you've got a harassing ghost. Once ladies.
Yes, you do.
Ooh.
You've got Byron Mills, he owned the property at one time, and his
Byron.
room was Bad Boy Byron in room 310. But he really fancies the young single. Are you redheaded? If you're redheaded and you're young and single, and you stay in room 310, you might encounter Byron's spirit. Supposedly lights have turned on.
Giggles, things that go bump in the night by Byron.
By Byron.
It's in the morning. I got bumped by Byron.
I know. Sorry.
And there are even the housekeepers. There are housekeepers at that hotel that will not clean his room because they really don't want to encounter his spirit or disturb his spirit. Yeah, and there are people that have said that a woman, that has said that she felt somebody like sit down next to her in the bed, and like there was, when she like turned on the light, there was like the impression of somebody who had sat there next to her. So there's all sorts of weird things, but room 310, if you're young, single, and redheaded.
Wow, I like this. This is that we I'm not, so I don't get to be harassed or bumped by Byron. So and the movie thing, we have to get into that. I know Steve Sniker wants to hear about that, but I do want to go back before we forget about this, because this looks trippy too. Dewan Light Sanctuary. I was looking at your photos, and it's like little rainbow things going on. And tell us about this. This is neat.
So this is it's on the grounds of the college, of the United College there up at Montezuma, and designed by Virginia Dewan and a couple other folks. It's a sanctuary. It's free. It's open to the public. And it serves as a refuge. It's gorgeous. It capitalizes on the light of New Mexico, and it's got this alignment to the sun, the moon, the stars. And you go in there, and it's all white, and there's the light that comes through, and it creates these prism effects and these beautiful rainbow colors. It's just remarkable, and people go in there, and some people do yoga in there. People go in there and just sit. You have students that come in and just sit and meditate. You have the public that comes in. It really is one of those breathtaking places, and you just walk inside and you're like, oh my gosh. I mean, it's all about light and the fracture of light. It's wonderful.
Wow, that's really cool.
I know.
Who would think of something like that? That's just really crazy,
Mhm.
How big is it?
Unbelievable. It's small, very small.
Mm-hmm.
Like how many people do you think?
Oh, you could get. I mean, they've like kind of benches along the walls and things. You probably could get I don't know, I'm guessing 30, 40 people in there, it's one of those places that we walked in kind of the middle of the day, and it was just the two of us, and it was just really beautiful. I wanted to like just sit there for a long time.
And it sounds like a nice place to meditate, and just chill out.
Yeah. Study light and color too.
I like
artists,
that.
I think they would really enjoy it.
That's cool.
So,
and that's
definitely.
This is part of the arts, but and film being a big part of this. So apparently, you said that filming movies and TV shows started back in the 1900s in Las Vegas.
Right. I think they were, the Westerns, the cowboys. They shot a lot of Westerns in the area, and for a number of years, it really was the place for the Westerns to happen. And then I think later on, towards the 60s, is when things started to come alive again, which was with Dennis Hopper and Easy Rider came through town, and that's such an iconic movie, and so that was a big biggie for Las Vegas and putting it on the map there. And then there was a lot of other films that were there, Red Dawn and Convoy and Wyatt Earp.
I know.
Yes.
Sorry. There's nothing like a convoy. Sorry, it's wonderful. You had Wyatt Earp.
Breaker.
Wyatt Earp. That is super cool. You got to love that. But it's still going now. Like they're still filming there now.
Yeah, it's a very strong film scene. They've even created the film commission there because it's just becoming big, and they want to continue to get Hollywood to consider it. And the biggest movie I think is No Country for Old Men, which really was the one of the biggest ones, and they set up shop there. Also Longmire, which is a favorite Western series, a TV series. And what's interesting is, they have these movie locations. You can go around and find them. And there are a lot of people who really, film tourism has gotten quite popular. People want to see the places that their favorite TV or movies are shot or filmed on location. And so, they have this wonderful building on the plaza, and people love to take pictures of it. It serves as the office of the sheriff for Longmire, which actually is in a fictitious county in Wyoming, but they're using Las Vegas as the stand-in. And so written on the door is, the county sheriff's the title there, and so people come up and take photos of that all the time. But it really is. There's a lot of potential, I think, in that town because it has so many. Variety of settings. It can, you've got the mountains, you've got a castle in there, you've got all these different architectural styles. It can serve as locations for anything from Manhattan to Mexico kind of thing. So I think in that respect, it really is attracting a lot of attention, and people now are saying, hey, let's stop in Las Vegas. We're in northern New Mexico. Let's make a stop there. And I think they find it very worthy and a very unique and colorful stop for them.
It sounds like selfie paradise.
I know. Like, hey,
go take selfies and.
Well, yeah, I want to go because
in the sheriff's office.
do they have because you're in northern New Mexico, and I know that when Pat was there, she was there in October at Pecos, and she got like a little bit of snow, and apparently the park is so well known for these sunsets and sunrises with the Mission, and then when you have snow, like photographer's paradise, right?
Absolutely.
So, do they get a lot of snow? Because I always look at this with New Mexico up in the north. I know like down in the southwest here, we've got the Gila Wilderness area, and they get some crazy snow that can actually, the snow melt can take roads out. It's the way it is. But it's funny, I just got a press release from Pecos National Historic Park as we're talking right now. I know. It's serendipity. It's Byron, dude.
Yeah, it's Byron.
But we're not redheads. But what's the weather like? Because it sounds like a year-round destination, especially when you're talking historic buildings.
Yeah, it's definitely a year-round destination. I mean, we're having a particularly mild winter here. I'm looking out in Santa Fe, and it's close to 50 degrees currently, and we've had such very little snow. Skiers are very, very unhappy. But it's northern New Mexico. It varies with its climate. We can have snow one day and gorgeous sunny temps and warm the next day, and it particularly in the winter it can be that way, especially also in the spring. It can be very windy and get all sorts of weather. They say if you don't like it, wait a second because it'll change. And so I think it's one of those destinations you can come and visit all year round. And the Pecos is just, to me, it's just one of those exquisite places. I don't think a lot of people know about it. I really don't. I've asked people outside of the state of New Mexico, and even some people in New Mexico who have just never been and don't really even know of its existence. And it's absolutely such a treasure. It's beautiful, and I really encourage people, if they're in this region, to go there. I think they'll find that it is such a rewarding destination.
Maybe because Las Vegas, Nevada is so prominent, it might be a challenge for people to realize, that there's another Las Vegas.
Yeah, and what's funny is the people in Las Vegas say that they get people who come in town and they're like, "Where are the casinos? Where's we've come to see the casinos," because they think they're in Las Vegas, Nevada, and they'll see the signs on the highway. They'll see the signs on the highway saying, 20 miles to Las Vegas, and they, it's humorous. They have no idea that they're not in the state of Nevada.
I know, well, Nevada, New Mexico, you're not that far away, but it is kind of,
and it is southwestern.
But it's got the movie history, and it's got the real Southwest, vibe going on, and it's all connected in some way. But I love the fact. Well, I don't love that there was a Civil War, so I need to say that correctly. But I love that that there's that history there, so people know, because people seem to think that the Civil War really just happened, back east, up north, not here.
Right.
And the Southwest played some crucial roles in the Civil War. I mean, even California, there's sites, historic sites representing, skirmishes and shootings. I mean, even up in the Sequoia region, back in the day, like in Tulare County, the northern part was like the North, and the South was the South, and the rebels and the Yankees basically duked it out and shot each other in the streets. There were shootouts.
It's just like the Republicans and Democrats.
Yes, it's kind of like what's going on now. But anyway, let's not get into that. I love the idea that you went with this, wonderful tour guide, and everyone, SouthwestDetours.com is the website, because it's so true with like park ranger tours and things like that. When you can have someone give you those stories, so you really understand what you're looking at, where you're walking through. Yeah. And if you feel something go bump, then it's Byron, because they told you about Byron. you need to know. And then also for the Visitor Bureau website, it's visit.lasvegasnm.com, the NM for New Mexico. So visit.lasvegasnm.com. So I encourage people to go there. It's always good to go to tourism websites before you get there, so you don't miss out on the stuff you want to see.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So where is your next destination, Miss Fire
Well,
Monkey?
I just got back yesterday from St. Augustine, Florida, which is another treasure trove of history, which I will can't wait to talk to you about that next month.
Yes.
And it was just one of those charming, historical, wonderful places with Ponce de Leon's footprint everywhere, kind of thing. But once again, the historical aspect, the architectural styles, just one thing after another. So I was really, and the ecological aspects of it as well. So it was a really fascinating adventure. So that was wonderful. I am heading to Oxford, Mississippi for a literary. Yes, literary and cultural aspect tour. I will be heading there not this coming week, but the following week.
I have wanted to go there for years. There's such a literary hub there of all these writers, and they still have these major conferences every year. We actually did a show on with some of the like professors of literature, and this was years ago. And it was, remember Julie Shirky was on the show? She's a publicist, a book publicist, and I want to remember the gentleman's name, but he's an author, and he wrote about the island in Louisiana near Avery Island where you were. That was where all the lepers, it was like a leprosy colony, a leper colony, where people were basically banished there, and where everybody thought they were
that you could
catch leprosy. Anyway, so he wrote about these people. And so, but anyway, he came on the show and they were talking about Oxford, and I keep looking at Oxford because there's architecture there, like it's amazing. You're going to be near Vicksburg, the battle site there too, the national park.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm very excited. They have a kind of a Chautauqua-like festival there, and so I will be there for that, which should be really quite interesting. So yeah, I'm very, very excited about that.
Awesome. And everyone, Debbie will be back on our show on February 4th. I don't know. Are we in 2018 now? We are, right?
You don't remember because you don't have to handwrite the date anymore.
Yeah, I know. Well, I know it's like it's one of those things you start writing. Write out a check and say sorry. It's.
Who writes a check?
I know. When do you write a check?
That's why you don't remember the date.
I know.
The year.
No, I can't handwrite anyway. But she will be back on the show February 4th to tell us all about St. Augustine. So we're looking forward to that. It's just such fascinating history out of Florida. It's amazing stuff. So always good stories. And of course, as I was saying earlier, Debbie's article all about this beautiful region, Pecos National Historic Park, and also Las Vegas will be in the February-March issue of Parks and Travel magazine, and also on nationalparktraveling.com. Debbie, are you ready for your song?
I am indeed.
Okay. This is dedicated to Billy the Kid and all the gangs and Easy Rider and anybody who had a gun and was hiding out, doing things out in that area.
The outlaws.
I know, and it's also dedicated to the one place you were talking about, the Evil Room.
So the evil, yes.
The evil, yes, excuse me, the evil. So I just figured I had all these other songs, and then I was reading your article. I'm like, no, dude, we're going down. We're going to get, this song is called, it's a little Western thing, and it's called Little Liar, and it's from our friends, the Joiners, and they're based out in Birmingham, and everyone, Birmingham, the National Historic Trail and that park that you went to in Birmingham, its anniversary is tomorrow. Go check that out.
That's right. That is right.
Yeah. So, So anyway, that they're out there in Birmingham, but this is off of their very first album, Olives and Oil, and you can get it on Bandcamp.com. So here it is, Little Liar. Thanks so much for joining us, Debbie.
Thanks, Debbie.
Oh, thanks for having me, Gail. Talk to you next time. Bye.
See you soon.
Cool. Travel safe.
Bye.
1, 2, 3, 4. Baby, now somebody else is breaking my bed. There's no more bullets beneath my sheets, guns behind my head. Baby, now I'm finding out that I like life on the run. From 666 crucifix, my nightmares and your gun. I will run from the little liar. Don't waste time with those matches, son. You're already on fire. Yep. think everything's pink when I'm looking at her from behind. So thank you, little liar, for getting out of my bed. Don't forget your locket now, you're forgetting your head. I'm on the run from the little liar. Don't waste time with those matches, son, you're already on fire. I'm on the run from the little liar. You've had your turn, I see your burn. You got the mark of a little liar, yep. Somebody else is breaking my bed. No more bullets beneath my sheets, guns behind my head. Maybe now I'm finding out that I like life on the run. 666 crucifix, my nightmares and your gun.
Everyone, again, that was the Joiners, and that was Little Liar. It took us a while to get there, but we got there, and hopefully we'll get to smooth sailing and get Ward Heinrichs on the show. So cross your fingers and stay tuned. Well, San Diego employment attorney Ward Heinrichs, Esquire, is back on Big Blend Radio today to talk about harassment in the hospitality and tourism industries. And Ward is a regular Big Blend Radio guest and contributor to Big Blend Radio and TV magazine. And you can see his articles and listen to his past interviews. Just go to blendradioandtv.com and click into the expert department. But, you know, since we've opened up the doors on tourism and hospitality content in our Parks and Travel magazine, he is also writing in there now talking about laws that pertain to those industries. And his first article coming up in the February and March issue of Parks and Travel magazine is all about harassment in restaurants, hotels, and bars. And he's going to be joining us now to talk all about that. And if you want to see his article, it's also up already if you go to nationalparktraveling.com. And I encourage you to go to his website because you can go and listen to his podcast and read his articles. And you may need to hire him if you're in San Diego, whether you're an employer or an employee. So go to bestemploymentattorneysandiego.com. You'll find him on Facebook and Twitter at Ward Heinrichs. Ward, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Lisa. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good. We're really glad to hear your voice. It took a little time getting you on here. We had some glitches on the show, but we're rolling ahead now, so that's good. But harassment, that is not a little glitch. This is a big deal, talking about what's going on, obviously, in the entertainment industry. But, when we saw the Me Too wave on social media, it was like pretty much every woman from every walk of life was talking about it, and still are.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've seen in the news that it's really come to a head and is capturing the headlines all over the place and continuing to do so even today. And it's not just restricted to those areas we see in the news, the politicians and media, other media, and Hollywood, but it's alive in other places too. And in fact, I did some internet research for this article and came across the name of Anthony Bourdain, and I've watched his show before. He does a great several shows that run on various cable outlets, and he's funny, he's good, but he's edgy. And he wrote a book celebrating the edginess of the kitchen. And he's since actually made an apology for that. He said, "Boy, if I'd known that I had fostered this type of atmosphere, I would have done something differently to begin with." So the point I'm making is, kitchen, in restaurants has had some problem. It's been outlined and written about by some famous people, and it's been investigated by undercover reporters too. And so that is an area where there seems to be some issues.
It's interesting. I actually read Kitchen Confidential, and I was like, damn, things are going on kitchen tables that you shouldn't, then the next thing you know, people are getting served from there. That's like, no, thank you. That book was like crazy, But there is that same, when you look at that, what happens with, the kitchen area and the bar area, and musicians are tied into that too, because I know just as being a musician and having chef friends and restaurant friends and clubs and bar friends, that, at midnight or 1 a.m. when everyone else is stumbling home, this whole other thing starts to happen, and it's like they're all hanging out, and it's time for cocktails then, and that seems to be a thing. I think that there's this late shift cocktail time, and then one thing leads to another.
Well, yeah. The theme that I've seemed to see in these industries is men and women working closely together in a more loose work setting. If you're working in a factory, it's pretty well governed. If you're working in an office, there's less opportunity for that kind of thing to go on. But here, there's just a lot of rushing around, and then there is that, like you said, the tendency to maybe do a little partying after the day is done. And I don't think you see it quite as much in other industries. So I think that's a good insight.
Yeah, because I know that lots of restaurant owners, bar owners in particular, give their employees like a free drink at the end of the shift. Offices don't really do that. Yeah, so it's kind of maybe that's not a good policy. What do you think?
Well, my opinion on alcohol. I've talked about it on the holiday party reviews that we've done in the past, and it just creates potential workplace problems. And so I say, do not foster it. I don't think it's going to benefit you. Now, I shouldn't say that. The benefit is people like it, and it can keep your employees happier. But the problem with alcohol is it reduces the inhibitions, and depending on how much you drink, it could drastically reduce them and get you into some trouble. So for that reason, I think maybe other benefits are more appropriate, other small gifts, whatever it is, and that way you don't have the downside of the alcohol.
Right, and the other thing too, when you look at this, I was just thinking back to, watch what your employer is doing. You've talked about on shows before on hospitality about tipping, and I know that stuff could change soon, right? From what I was hearing, that tipping could go away. I don't know what's happening with that, but I was thinking Mario Batali, who's friends with Anthony Bourdain, was in trouble for taking his employees' tips or something like that. It wasn't too long ago, and then bam, right after that, in trouble for sexual harassment. Same thing was the Me Too thing came out on him, and I'm like, I just go like, how does it kind of, if you have an employer maybe looking from the employee side and they start doing something wrong in one area, it could mean that it's going to happen in that area too. It's you got to. I think as an employee now you have to interview your potential employer to make sure you're not working for someone who can harm you.
Well, that's interesting. There are some types of interviews where that probably happens more often than in other types of interviews. I think mostly people just want to get a job because they want to make some money. Now, I think higher up the rung you go, CEO, things like that, then, I think there is a two-way interview more. But honestly, I don't think it happens too much on your average job.
Okay. So now let's go into what can businesses do. And I do want to get into what happens also with farm workers, because that's tied into our food and into restaurants and even tourism, because there's a huge thing with agritourism. So let's talk about what can we do as a business owner, hotel, restaurant, bar. What are some of the things we can look at to protect ourselves from, landing up in a situation that can disrupt work, this kind of thing too. And obviously, if someone gets sexually harassed, it's devastating for them.
Yeah, because of the climate that we're in, I think we're going to see an uptick in sexual harassment cases filed, and in fact, I think I've seen more of those come across my desk in one way or the other. And so I think just people are more sensitive to it. So I think it's very important that employers do the right things to try to correct the situation. If it needs to be corrected, at least investigate it. And so at the very least, and in California it's required, you need to have a sexual harassment policy that's written. And it's normally in a handbook. It doesn't have to be in a handbook, but it should be a written policy. So you start there. And it should be strongly worded that we just don't tolerate this, and then you got to follow up with it though. You got to show that you don't tolerate it as well. And of course, there's the sexual harassment posters that are supposed to be posted in visible places in the workplace. So that's another requirement in California, and you just need to do it. And the reason why you need to do these things, if you do these basic things, the writings, the posters, then if you get investigated for a claim of sexual harassment, you can say, hey, look, I'm doing these things. And then, if there is a complaint, you need to follow up on it and do an investigation and do it quickly. Now, different investigations are going to turn up different things. Doesn't mean that you necessarily have to fire anyone. You might even find that, well, that's not truly sexual harassment. I know that some companies, if even for a claim, they really tend to fire people who have a claim against them, whether it's strongly supported or not. So some companies take a very defensive position on it. And I hate to see it overused, and I like to see it used fairly. So certainly the investigation is important, and then you come to the right, the conclusion that seems to come to a conclusion, and then follow up on the necessary punishment or counseling or whatever it is.
These investigations, are they confidential? Or, I know if the person making the claim goes to the break room and tells everybody, obviously it's not going to be confidential. But from the manager's point of view, or the owner, because that's what the break room's about. You get to hear scandal.
Water cooler talk, that's right there.
But, so, do you think, is there something in the management level and the ownership level that would say you need to keep this confidential?
I think that's an important thing to include in your policy because you want to make now it's not required by the law, but you want to make the person who is making the complaint as comfortable as possible, and confidentiality goes a long way to doing that. But of course, the obvious problem is, you can't keep it completely confidential. There's really hardly any way because, like you said, maybe someone's running their mouth anyway, and someone's going to have to investigate, and they're going to have to probably talk to several witnesses. So all those people are going to be alerted that something's going on, and then further, then there is a report. Well, not in all cases. Sometimes it's done orally, and I think that's appropriate in certain circumstances. But I think if it's a serious enough matter, it certainly should be done in writing, and writing should be done. And it doesn't have to be handed over to the person who made the request. In fact, there's ways of protecting that, and it might be a good thing for the company to do that. But if there is a writing, that would probably be seen by more than one person. And again, so there's a limitation on confidentiality when that type of thing happens. But at all levels, no matter who's talked to, they should all be told that we want you to keep this confidential. And so if that's said enough times throughout the investigation, the chances of it being confidential are greater. Now, again, you can't stop people from blabbing. People may do it anyway, but at least you've done your best.
What about the situation where an employee is put? We were talking to some hotel staff a while back, and we were talking about some of the hotel experiences, which are pretty bizarre. When the cleaning crew comes in, is there somebody in the room or not? And do they need to be in the room alone? Especially as a woman, you walk in to clean the room, and there's a man there, and he's naked in bed, and tells you to come on in anyway. All kinds of weird stories. I mean, it makes your hair rise up. It's really bad. Some of the things we've heard from hotel staff. So, what is the, how does an employer, can the employer be sued for not having a safe working place through something like that, or how do you handle something like that where the girls going to clean the rooms can feel safe?
Well, in that particular situation, I don't know how often it happens, but if it's a regular occurrence, certainly then the employer is on notice, and that's the real key with these third-party claims of sexual harassment. California law clearly protects employees and requires the employer to have essentially a safe workplace, a place that is free of harassment. And that goes for all employees or employers in California. Even if you employ one person, you can have a sexual harassment charge against you. In other discrimination types of cases, it has to be five or more employees. So everyone in California who employs someone is exposed to this. And most often what you see is harassment done by either a coworker or a supervisor. Supervisor is called strict liability. That means if it happens, there's liability, and it just depends on how much. And now, of course, you have to prove that it happens, but if you do, then there's liability. Coworkers are different, and the same thing is, and there's the same difference with third-party harassers. Maybe an independent contractor comes in and delivers meat, and there's a woman there who, receives the meat into the location, and that third-party independent contractor harasses her. The only way that can become a claim is if the business is on notice that it happened. Then the same thing with a coworker. The business has to be on notice that it's going on. So that's why it's important for people who feel harassed to report these things. So if they don't report them, maybe the business doesn't know, and then they're not going to be on the hook at all. And the other part of that is, rather than just making them potentially liable, is to alert them to a problem that they can cure. That's hopefully that's where this all goes. Is that we're taking this seriously. We're trying to make the workplace friendlier and fairer. And when something like this is reported, we investigate and do the right thing based on what the investigation requires. So that everyone's trying to make it better, not just protect from liability. Now, of course, you do have to protect from liability, and the same policies would apply. They help you make the workplace better. They help protect you better. So both things are promoted.
I think if I owned a hotel, that I would never allow a cleaning staff person to go into a room alone ever.
Yeah,
I think I would just have two girls go in, or whatever it is, so that you never run into the thing where a girl's in the room alone with some guy that she doesn't know, and it's a problem, and you could make the work go faster that way. Two can clean it faster than one. So I guess I would probably take that out. None of my girls would go into rooms alone ever.
And keep the door open, which is also a security risk for the guests. But there's also that. I think that it is Friday, Ward, and I think we need to give you a hot toddy. I'm just saying, since we're talking about bars and hotels and restaurants.
Sounds good.
Hot toddy. I know. I mean, it's really interesting.
I do have a cold.
I know, that's what I'm saying. You need a toddy. We can hear that a little bit, so we hope you feel better. So get it's the weekend. You're not allowed to be cold. Have a cold. That's rude. It's not allowed. It's not allowed for Wardies in San Diego. And you are in the capital of hospitality in San Diego and tourism. I mean, that's a major part of San Diego's economy is tourism. And
it is.
It really is.
Certainly is.
Yeah, it's
a lot of hotels out there.
Man, I love San Diego. It's one of the best cities ever. It really is. It's people got to go hang out there and party and go out to the beach and out to the mountains. It's a cool place. So the other thing too, we've got to protect workers from guests, whether it's a restaurant or a bar, right? Because that's the other thing. Patrons can get naughty.
They can't, especially in bars.
And the other thing, at some point I want to talk about what about bartenders? I know this isn't harassment, but I'm just thinking that down the road we got to talk about this because calling, cabs, whose fault is it if someone drives off? Does it land on a bartender's? I was just thinking about that when they're too drunk or something. I want to cover that because it's important. There's all of that education that goes into it. But you're saying that really you think that there's going to be more training involved and people need to start working, towards that. Do you advise your clients to just start doing the training now? I know last time you were on the show, you were saying like everybody should be involved in the training, not just the supervisors.
Yeah. Now, there is a law in California that's requiring training for all agricultural workers. So that law is already in place for that industry. It's wise in all industries now. I just think this has become such a huge thing and such a liability risk that everyone – and that also shows any investigator that comes in from an outside agency, hey, I'm not just doing the minimum. I'm training everyone. And honestly, it doesn't even cost that much more because if you're training, 5, 10, 15 supervisors, it's not that much more to train 50 or 100 people. It's going to be a larger room, but it's going to be the same exercise. So you're not going to pay the trainer much more or any more probably. And so it's just, to me, and now, there's downtime. Certainly there would be downtime in that. Certainly, if it's not downtime, if it's outside of hours, you have to pay people. So there is that expense. There's no doubt about that. But it just seems to me that in this current climate we're in, that's just a wise thing to do. So I really think that employers should consider that seriously.
Yeah, and I think you would probably keep your employees longer if you can manage to keep bad things from happening. But how do you put a dollar amount when somebody comes to you and they been a victim of sexual harassment in the workplace? How do you decide what action to take? I mean, as far as if you're going to go to court and you're going to ask for money, how do you figure out what to ask for, what to claim?
Well, I mean, that's just a basic exercise attorneys go through if they're do any litigation. And you take in the facts, and you have some experience probably in the same type of facts and what the value may have derived from previous cases. And then you also can look up jury verdicts. You can also look up arbitration awards and match the facts as close as you can to the facts that you have. And those are rules of thumb as well. So yeah, it's a process through which you go. And some of it depends on what the client really wants. Sometimes the client doesn't really want to make a claim or file a claim. What they really want is maybe to ask for some severance. And so, then you'd approach that a little differently. You go, okay, well, you don't want to expose yourself to the anxiety of litigation, which I totally get. I mean, litigation is not fun for the people who are involved in it. So, that would probably reduce the value because of that position, but it may be a good way for them to get on with their life and correct the problem. So various things go into that.
Yeah, if you're involved in a lawsuit and you move on to a different job or attempting to get a new job, is this part of something that would maybe have employers, I don't think I'm going to hire you? Because you took your other boss to court. I mean, would they know?
Possibly find out. There's a check-the-box rule in California and other states now that says you can't require someone to disclose criminal convictions until after you've given them a solid job offer. But the same isn't true for all prior litigation. So it's certainly possible for an employer to do a background check and find lawsuits or something else in someone's history. And yeah, I mean, honestly, sure, that could have an effect. I think it depends on the situation, and it depends on what the employer finds out. I mean, you don't have to disclose it, but it could come up one way or the other.
Wow, it's amazing, man. It's just how much, when you think about going into business, how much you have to think of. And then just as an employee, you have to watch yourself. To me, I think you always have to look at where you're going and it's difficult. It's difficult.
I think it's confusing because it's okay. What's against the law and what isn't? And if being an idiot at work and pinching people's butts is not against the law, or is it? You know, I don't think people know what's against the law, what isn't, what is bad behavior, and then what your employer expects out of you is different than what the law says you can or cannot do. You know, so I think it's a confusing area.
It is. There's a lot of gray area, and it's interesting that you brought up the pinching butts thing. So let's run with that a little bit.
Man.
It certainly can be.
A lot of salesmen, and that's what they do.
They pinch butts.
They pinch butts in the break room.
So things happen.
So then you learn to take your break outside.
Okay. Well, now
it's true.
Pinching butts is actually that's battery. So that's actually a crime.
And, really?
Yeah, sure it is. Battery's offensive contact. So there's that aspect of it. Now, let's say the person who's doing the pinching is pinching men and women. Now, the problem with that is, all right, it's battery against everyone, but it may not be discriminatory because they're doing it to everyone, and there are lots of cases that talk about that, where the boss was a jerk to a woman, says the boss was a jerk to me, called me a bitch, did all this stuff, and you go, wow, that's pretty bad. But then you learn in the litigation that he does that to men too, and then the court said, you don't have a case.
But remember the scene that segment on Friends, the TV show. And Chandler Bing, the guy, every time they'd go out of a meeting, he would whack him on the butt.
Yes,
and then, he complained about it. And then everybody else was getting whacked on the butt, and he got all depressed because it's like, I want my butt whacking back.
No, that's just assault then. Assault. Wow.
Well, it's weird. These kind of things are so weird, and you don't know whether to say anything. Is it worth it? And you have to look at that. And when I was 19 or whatever, 19 when we got back to this country, and I worked in the restaurant industry, and I couldn't believe this guy. I was left alone, and because we both sang, and so we would sing, getting everything closed up. Didn't think this would lead to anything, and butt pinching, just slap you on the butt, or just give you. It's like when someone walks by and they give you a squeeze, on the side, and I was like, dude, what are you doing, man? And I'm like, what are you doing? And then he tried to kiss me, and I was like, okay, that's it, I'm out of here. And instead of going to the boss, I left and got a new job. I got a new job the next day and quit. And she's like, well, I wish you had told me something. I'm like, really? He's your head guy. What are you going to do? I just got here. You're really going to, that's how I felt at that time. And I just, went out and, at this point I knew this was going to be my big career of life. So I think that's a lot of, these guys never get caught because people just move on. And you have to, at that point we just got here, I need to put food on the table, so it was like, I don't have time for that.
No, you're right. I think that happens quite a bit. That someone just says, hey, it's just not worth it. And, and there's even in the law it says, well, if it's one incident, maybe you don't have a case. Of course, it depends on how bad the incident is. So one incident probably doesn't create a huge liability situation for the employee and employer, and so that means it's not a very big case for the employee. And is it worth it? In so many cases, I'm sure the answer is, to the person who's been subjected to that, is no. It's not worth it, so they move on. I think that probably does happen quite a bit. I'm honestly, I'm sure it happens more often than a case is filed. I'm really sure of that.
Yeah,
so people don't want to do that. Now but it's interesting that you brought up Friends, because you remember I talked about the Friends case some years ago, where there was body talk in the writing room, and the idea it was that it was creative, and so the woman who filed the case was thrown out of court because, number one, she was on notice that it was happening, and number two, it was part of the creative process. Now, something interesting in the restaurant industry is it seems there was an investigative reporter, I think her last name was McMillan, and she did a couple different types of jobs trying to investigate sexual harassment. And she said that she actually, on the last day of job, was subject to it. But up until that point, she had played tough, bantered back, engaged in the activity of the body language and behavior. So if you do that as a woman, you hurt your chances, and maybe drastically, of of winning a case or even getting a case filed. So and that's that puts, I think that puts a woman in a difficult situation. You're in an industry where this kind of stuff goes on, so you have to take one of two tacks. One, I'm going to be cold and aloof, or two, I'm going to engage and be part of the crowd. And but when I do that, now it doesn't seem unwanted, and that's one of the things about harassment. It has to be unwanted. If you want it, then it's legal.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's weird because people do get that little thing at work, like, ooh, there's like little relationships that happen, right? And then you have to pretend you're not doing it, but you're doing it, or having a relationship, either one, quite frankly, and you're trying to hide it, and then suddenly you realize, like, maybe you're dating someone you really don't like, and then the woman may say something. You know what I mean? I remember dating quickly dating someone. Like, I went out on a date with a guy from work. I should never have done this. This was years ago, and years ago. And I think I just turned 21. And we stopped at my house real quick on the way somewhere. I came out, and he had taken a hot dog bun out of my refrigerator and put his pee-pee in it. And I'm like, what are you doing? Get out. Get out. And then I had to go face him the next day. And he's best friends with my boss. What do you do? I go up to the boss and I say, listen, did you know this dude did this? And he's like, well, so? And I'm like, dude. And this is the same boss that licked your hand, Nancy.
Yeah, I know. And that whole company
was corrupt.
It's brittle.
Oh, my gosh.
Sorry.
It was a really weird company. And they had stores all over the place. And whenever something happened, and something was always happening because it was mostly musicians.
You could write a book.
Yeah, it was pretty funny, actually. The guys at the top, the answer was always, well, boys will be boys.
I know. And I'm like, yes, with hot dog buns they will.
Yeah.
That was the craziest thing. I was just like, okay, don't date your colleagues. Do not do that. That was the first lesson. And, yeah, I learned.
Yeah, no, that's probably a good policy, and that, wow, I don't know if that's I have to say, Lisa, that is a funny story, and I'm feeling guilty for thinking it's funny.
I
oh my gosh.
I called Nancy and I'm like, dude, you're never going to believe what Kyle did. Yeah. And she goes, yes, I do. I told you.
Yeah.
I told you.
And then her boss, which came because we were in different stores because they didn't want to put us together because we might be trouble. And so her boss came to my store and he took my hand when saying hello, you're Lisa's mom, and then he licked it.
Yeah.
So I hit him. As he licked my hand, I just hit him in the face with my hand, like, get off. What are you doing? In front of everybody, and nothing happened to either one of us. It's like the whole culture of that company was so bizarre.
But it's entertainment, and I think the food industry is like that. And when you're in the kitchen, everybody's swearing. Everybody's already in that zone. There's this hot, and it's the same in the music industry.
Yeah.
It just is something's going to happen, and I think that the training is always that little reminder, and then everybody's looking around the room going, "Are they talking to me?" You know what I mean? So it's like one of those things you have to do. And I think, do the posters really work? Putting up all these posters, or is it's a safety guard for the owner of the company, right?
That's what it really is. It's required by the law, and so do the employees need more information on a poster than they already have? Probably not. It probably doesn't affect that at all. But it is, like you said, a safety, a way of protecting the employer because they're following the law. So, you just have to do it. You just have to do it, even though it does it really make a difference? I don't know. I would venture not a huge difference.
It reminds people, maybe, like wash your hands before you go back.
Yeah, it can be a reminder. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
they're kind of like, do I do this? Having a manual, I think having regular things where it's always in your face, like we are a conscious company on it. It's just like drugs, drug testing. That same company kept knocking on my door for drug testing because I kept passing, But the first time I almost didn't think I would. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But anyhow, that's going to be our next conversation, Ward. I know everyone, Ward will be back on the show January 24th talking about weed. California, it's legal for recreation. It's now you can do it, but it's not like you could just walk in and start lighting up everywhere, and it does change a little bit for employment law, and things can start happening. So it's going to be an interesting year, Ward, unless Jeff Sessions
I think it will
gets his
be.
way and bans the whole thing everywhere, because it's state law
Oh my
versus
gosh.
federal again. I know. If he does that, Colorado's going to be mad. So California.
Well, I mean, the bottom line on that is it's illegal under federal law, and if the feds want to enforce it, and pretty much they haven't in California. I mean, we've had medical marijuana for years, and there really has been very little federal enforcement. But if the feds want to, they can, and we'll see.
Yeah.
Now, what I heard though recently was that that Sessions said the local attorney generals can apply that law the way they want to. So a statement came out from the one in San Diego and said, well, we're going to continue doing things the way we've done them. So that means, not much.
Wow.
I think California is going to disengage from the rest of the
It's time to secede. I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
It's going to be its own country.
I know, man. Your office is going to be like, it's going to all these different cases, harassment and weed. It's going to be like one after the other. I'm just kidding, Ward. I don't know.
Sometimes people use things like alcohol for an excuse.
Yeah.
Or like, I can't help it, I was drunk, and then they get off. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So there's too many. There are way too many puns flying around in this conversation already. I'm just saying. Oh man. So Ward, listen, get better this weekend. You're not allowed to get a cold. You have to come back on our show January 24th. So we've got to talk about weed. So we're excited about that. That's fun. It's a fun topic.
Okay, sounds good. I'm ready.
I know. Everybody, again, you got to go to bestemploymentattorneysandiego.com, and he's also on Twitter at Ward Heinrich, so you can keep up with Ward there. And his articles, just go to blendradioandtv.com. You'll see Ward in our expert department. Again, he's going to be featuring this article in our February-March issue of Parks and Travel magazine, but it's already up on the website at nationalparktraveling.com. Just type in Ward, you'll find it. And thank you so much for joining us, Ward, and for waiting. Apparently, there's a server issue because New York is having these major power outages, so that's what's going on with our show today. I was wondering what's going on. I'm like, try everything under the sun, but we're here. You made it on, and we still got to play our Crazy Little Liar song earlier. So we have a song for you, though. It is called, if I get it completely off air here, it's called Bar Band, because I figured it ties into what we're talking about, right? And you got a lot of bar bands in San Diego. Got a good music scene in San Diego. And this is from our friend the Tall Men Group, who do play in San Diego and L.A. And so it's off of their first album, 12 by 6. But thank you so much for joining us, Ward. Happy Friday.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. And you guys have a great weekend as well.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Here it is, everyone.
Bye.
Bar Band.
My daddy told me when times get hard, the music would see me through. So I played night and day when the world was new. I spent time in the army, I found myself a wife. We had kids right away and a pretty good life. And as the years moved forward, the engine lost some steam. Oh, where was that American dream? This is not the life I planned. Working a day job and every night playing in a bar band. in a bar band, and I'm so tired. Ooh, I'm so tired.
Everyone, again, that was the Tall Men Group with Bar Band, and I wanted to play that.
I know, that's cool.
Bar bands, you know what? They work hard, and half the time you're partying all night long, but they're also doing another job, or So just tip your bartenders, tip your musicians.
That's right.
Good segment with Ward on harassment, and again, his article's up on nationalparktraveling.com, and you can go to his website as well. Go to bestemploymentattorneysandiego.com. I want to thank everyone for joining us, especially sitting through these outages up. And I don't know what's going on in New York, but I think it's getting cold out there, and things are happening, getting all these power outages. And so thank you for bearing with us. And we will be back on Sunday. We have a Quality of Life show scheduled January 14th. It starts at 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to have a panel discussion on excellence and integrity, which is the very first key of excellence in the 8 Keys of Excellence Character Education Program. And we have the creator of the program joining us, Bobby DePorter. She is also the co-founder of SuperCamp and the president of Quantum Learning Network, one of our contributors as well, expert contributors. Rob Ridgway's back on the show, creator of the game Spontaneous, the Amazon award-winning or best-selling, both he's award-winning as well, board game. It's fun, so we're going to play some Spontaneous. Cool. And also Matt Scott, the author of the Find Something Awesome How-To book series for kids. And Steve Schneiker's got a new Hollywood history segment just for that.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be a really good show talking about integrity. I think it's something important. And then after that, we have Billboard charting New Age and World Music recording artist Kalyani joining us to talk about our latest singles and videos, Tears for Inanna and Namu's Invocation. So we'll be chatting with her about that. And she is also a spiritually inspired visionary, a producer, artist, and founder of Stargate Alliance Films and Media. And her mission with her company is to inspire humanity through offering alternative visions and empowering tools for global soul transformation.
Wow.
Yeah. So she'll be on the show, and we'll play some of her beautiful music, and it really is beautiful. Everyone, again, you can keep up with us at blendradioandtv.com. Also on Facebook, we're there under Big Blend Magazine. And we are also on Twitter at Big Blend Mag, and I think we're still we went off air again. How about that? We're trying not to. But anyway, we are here, and we're going to close with some music, and here it is. We are going to play, because I have to, Buck Snort Annie. We haven't played this for a while, and it's, from Johnny Master and the Mama's Boys. Here it is. Take care.